We're delighted to welcome back an agency that always blows our minds. They have an uncanny knack of predicting what will happen before we know ourselves, and they're usually 10 steps ahead of most of the rest of us. This is the winner of the Lions Live editorial pick, meaning that it will be screened live on YouTube as it happens to a wider audience and also be available post-event. Here to talk about the transformation at speed, please welcome to the stage, RGA.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. As you can see, I'm not Bob Greenberg. I won't even try to imitate Bob. Unfortunately, at the last minute, Bob was not able to attend Cannes this year. So I am Barry Wacksman, Global Chief Strategy Officer of RGA, and I'm going to kick things off with my team here. We're going to talk about transformation at speed. That's our title. Now, all of you here are either probably from brands, you're marketers, you're from agencies, and chances are highly likely that your company has somehow been disrupted by technology. My good friend David Shing said the word disruption was the most overused term of 2017. Everyone's talking about disruption as being something that's happening to their business and to their industry. And if you're a brand, the disruption probably represents itself in the impact of technology on your consumer, and also the rise of a lot of new companies that you're now competing with that look nothing like the competition of the past. Now, if you're an agency, you're being disrupted by the fact that our clients have been cutting back on budgets, taking work in-house, and it's leading us to help them in new ways, and ways that we might not always be equipped to do. Now, the other side of disruption, of course, is probably the most overused word of 2018, which is transformation. If you're being disrupted, the only recourse is to change, is to transform. And so I think everybody's trying to figure out how to transform, and that is really what we're going to talk about today. Now, the thing about transformations is that it's not something that you can do on some long-term time frame. If you're being disrupted, you can't transform, you can't spend 3 years on a transformation, you can't often spend even a year. Transformation is something that has to happen quite quickly. And so I think the theme of this presentation is about how to transform now, how to do things quickly at speed. I think it's going to turn out that speed is going to be the great differentiator for whether or not companies survive going into the future, or whether or not they continue to get disrupted, and ultimately whether or not they potentially fail. So we're going to talk about how you can move fast. As an industry, we're not really set up to move fast. Consultancies, agencies, we often get blamed for being too slow. We have business models, actually, that reward us for moving slowly. And so speed is not something that's endemic to our cultures and to our industries. But clients desperately need us to move fast. The same thing is true on the client side. They're not often organized in a way that would enable them to transform fast as well. They have their own cultural things that hold them back. And so we're going to talk about all the ways that we can help accelerate change, and so that we can do this at speed. I'm joined here by my fellow presenters, Jess Greenwood, Saneel Radia. I think I lost the slide here. Here we go. Jess, Saneel Radia, and Ben Williams. And to kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to Jess, and she's going to talk about some of the ways that we've identified in which the industry is being disrupted. Jess.
Thank you. Can I just borrow a hand?
Yes.
Here we go. Thank you very much. So we are going to talk about why it is that we need to transform at this particular moment in time. And the thing that I wanted to talk about specifically is not the advertising industry. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years of the changes that are happening in the advertising industry. The thing that I want to talk about is advertising, like advertising itself. The interesting point of time that we're in right now is that advertising is facing some pretty epic challenges. And the big elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about, and we're not bringing forward in any way, is that audiences for ad-supported media are shrinking fast. So the amount of time that we spend consuming content in places that are ad-supported is going down. And that should be an enormous red flag for everybody in this room. We know that this happened on TV. Everybody's seen a chart that looks like this before, right? So this is 2011 to 2017. You can see 18 to 24-year-olds, we know that they're spending less time watching TV, but we can also see that every other age group is now also spending less time watching TV. And this statistic that we found that was absolutely fascinating is that 44% of the time that we spend with media is in places that are ad-supported. And that doesn't sound bad, but this is the lowest ever. We are finding more and more ways to consume content in ways that are not ad-supported. And all of these things that we thought for years and years were sure things, things like the Super Bowl, things like the Golden Globes, things like the Grammy Awards, these moments where everybody was facing the same way and we could reach everybody at once with our messaging, all of those are having problems reaching people. Super Bowl, lowest rating since 2009, Golden Globe Awards, Grammy Awards, everything going down. Meanwhile, so if people aren't consuming content that is funded by advertising, where are they? They're on Netflix, they're on Spotify, they're paying money for interfaces that are specifically designed not to interrupt your experience with advertising. Netflix is spending, how many people in this room have got a Netflix subscription? Yeah, we are not by any means exceptional, right? You guys can't see each other, but it's everybody. Yeah. So Netflix is going to spend $8 billion on content this year, which basically means that for every person in this room, if you're a fan of like Danish murder stories with female leads, then they've got a series. Sorry, that's me giving myself away, but like they have something for you because they have enough money from subscriptions to be able to do that. Spotify, growing really quickly based on the fact that people do not want to spend that much time with advertising. And we also wanted to point out, it's very easy for a sort of company born of technology to be like, TV is dying. We don't want to do that. TV is not dying. It has a really important role to play. But this is an everything problem. This is not just TV. This is everything. We are finding out that digital advertising the internet is revealing itself to be a kind of inhospitable place for advertising. We know that 2-second ad formats are not enough for P&G. The chief brand officer of P&G calling for what the hell are we meant to do with 2 seconds? We find that 90% of people skip pre-roll video ads. Can you put your hand up if you have ever skipped a pre-roll video ad? Again, everybody in this room, this is not niche or fringe behavior. Ad blocker usage is up 30% across the entire of the publishing ecosystem. And there are places on the internet that have massive audiences. So make no mistake, Facebook and Instagram and the platforms like them are doing an amazing job of serving more targeted and interesting and relevant advertising to us. But it is very, very hard to build a brand and an overall sense of a brand in that space. Just as a quick sort of demonstration, this is a 2-minute scroll through my Instagram feed last week. And this is the 3 sort of commercials, the 3 bits of marketing stuff that appeared in my feed after a like very, very quick scroll through Instagram. These were served to me on the sort of gist of relevance because I'm a woman who's interested in fashion and I was in New York and it happened to be hot that day, so what you get is a lot of summer dresses. But all of these are essentially the same. Some of them might lead to a conversion at some point in time. And there is no sense of the difference in brand with any of these. I'm willing to bet that none of you looked at the brand names at the top of this thing because you were all distracted by the images themselves. So whilst these spaces can be effective for conversion, they are not helping you build a brand. And the net of all of this is that brands dependent solely on advertising for relevance are struggling. Scariest chart of the presentation, I think. I think this is the really scary bit. We've hit peak scary. It's going to get better after this. Basically, of the Fortune 500, so these are the companies that pay the advertising industry, all of us in this room, this is who pays us. Last year, 48% of them grew, which is 241 companies, but then 52% of them shrank. So the Fortune 500, the people who pay our wages in the advertising industry, is shrinking. And that should be an enormous red flag. This is across all of the different categories. So let's look at consumer packaged goods. There's some interesting stuff happening here. So in 2016, of the top 100 CPG brands, 90% of them lost share, and 66% of them lost revenue. So these are all the market leaders losing share and losing revenue. However, this is where the good news starts. The full category grew by 6%. So the entire CPG category is still growing. It's just not growing through leaders. And we loved this quote from Sean O'Neill from Unilever, who said, I'm not losing share to P&G and other CPG companies. I'm losing it to small players who are finding niche products. And this is the reality everywhere. We used to talk about startups as being a technology thing, but now it is an every single category thing. Because if you are a consumer, and you have disposable income, the thing that you want is new and special and exciting, not old and big and familiar. You are looking for that new experience. So if you were basically in a Walmart being able to buy, or a Tesco's or a Carrefour, wherever it is that you shop, confronted with, on the one hand, an Oreo, and on the other hand, an artisan made by a grandmother, brilliant origin story, delicious macaroon-looking cookie, and you can buy them in the same place, why would you buy the Oreo? Like, that That's what's available to people right now. And this is the crux of what we're dealing with right now, is that the modern internet has essentially accelerated this path in every single category, from idea to challenger to threat, every single category. In beauty, Glossier, this is a US-based beauty brand growing 600% year on year by getting beauty out of the boardroom. That's what they want to do. They put their users first, they create products that really solve user problems, they're growing really quickly. In CPG, 2,500% year-over-year growth for Halo Top. If you haven't tried this, I highly recommend it. It is ice cream with no calories. It's the best thing. It's like literally, it should be up there with like the moon landings as like the best thing we've ever done. But they grew through a very, very targeted mass social strategy that basically targeted people, anyone who has ever wanted ice cream with no calories. They got you after yoga, they got you after the gym, they got you when you were Googling sort of ways to lose weight or whatever it is that they want. Their entire strategy was about social scale. This one everyone knows, mattresses from 0 to 200 million in sales. This is Casper. Everybody hated buying mattresses. Casper built this direct-to-consumer relationship where you could buy it in a box, online, simplified the entire process, has been around for 2 years, made $200 million, and is now facing disruption of its own because there are competitors coming into this landscape and replicating their model, so nobody is safe for long. And then finally, in automotive, despite how complicated an individual Elon Musk is turning out to be, Tesla's, I'm just going to leave that hanging. Tesla is selling out repeatedly because they are controlling their brand from the end to end. They control design, they control distribution, they control the showrooms, they control the commerce experience, and they're selling out repeatedly. So given that this is the International Festival of Creativity and not advertising, this is the new model that creativity looks like. This is what we should be focused on. What is the user-first philosophy? How do we scale through social? How do we go direct to consumer? What is our end-to-end control? How do we connect this customer journey across the entire spectrum? And then also, how do we do some advertising? Like, how do we get people there? It's not dead. It's very important. It has a role to play, but it's a different one. So, before I hand over to Saneel, the great transformation has definitely begun, whether we like it or not. We know that advertising still has a vital role to play, but not the starring one. It's very important. So the question that we're asking to you guys today is, how can we go beyond advertising to help our companies transform? So with that note, Saneel, you are up.
Thank you, Jess. You guys are all applauding Jess. Meanwhile, I'm thinking I need to fight with her about Elon Musk. So if you're going to help companies transform, that obviously also takes transforming your own offering. And so I wanted to just kind of quickly lay out the outputs that we do to achieve transformation at speed at RGA. So the first one is business transformation. This really is C-level transformation for a company. Think new business model, new product or service, identifying an adjacent market to enter. The next one is experience transformation. Think data-driven consumer journeys, how you turn commerce into membership. And then marketing transformation, which, to Jess's point, advertising may not have a starring role, but arguably that means that all those things in marketing outside of advertising have a more important role to play with a higher ROI. So how do you transform to be a modern marketer? So those are the outputs that we offer clients in terms of transformation. And although they're nice organizationally, we're RGA, so they fit in red boxes, but the reality is, actually, if you're a client, this can help you map to what level of transformation you're looking at, the scale of it, where in the organization. But in terms of how we operate, it's actually still quite integrated. And the reason is diversity of skills, like just how you bring different skills together. So skills that you're used to seeing, you know, and I'm sure many of you have in your own organizations, design, technology, marketing, things you know that we do every day, those apply across all of these transformations, right? The difference now is just how do we add the specialty layers to be able to ensure transformation at the right level. And so for us, that means at any given point, one team has to take that lead based on whatever that objective is. And so that's kind of that dynamic relationship of how we operate to help companies reach transformation. But the question of how you know when to lead is a big one. And we have a bit of a cheat sheet on this. It's not a steadfast rule. It's actually just a quick look at maturity of a company. So when a company is, let's say, an earlier stage company, and let's say it needs to upgrade its experience, or it needs to broaden its consumer base, that would probably be led by an experience transformation type effort. But let's say a company is scaling, probably most of the companies that you read about in the news today. Those are big companies. Maybe their brand needs an upgrade. Certainly they have to rethink how they're going to market if they're starting to scale new users, new segments. That requires a marketing transformation lead. And finally, just to put some language around this that can be understood, if you're a mature company, let's say you've been an industry leader for years, you're probably feeling some disruption. That's probably business transformation led. And arguably, anyone in an industry that's leading, multiple players feel that disruption around the same time because an industry gets disrupted, not just one company. When one company is out, that probably looks more like competition. So I'm going to do a slight deep dive here into the actual business transformation offering. As I said, it really is focused on helping the C-level innovate. And what's important to us around this ask is it's broad. I mean, what's important to be able to do is to be able to answer a diversity of questions. So I want to show you guys a list of real questions we've been asked in the last 2 years. We had to abstract them a bit. This is a sample set of them. But, you know, most clients, we had to abstract the clients because they can't, you know, talk about what transformation they're up to. But most clients, when they ask you a question, you see these aren't briefs. These are fundamental existential questions that lead to their business changing. And so we brought an example today. It's this one, which, by the way, just asking the right question means so much. And this client in particular deserves a lot of credit because that's a great question to ask. They didn't ask how to build a digital bank. They asked, how do we rethink a bank for a digital generation? And so the transformation at speed that came of this is this bank launched, and in the first 6 months, 500,000 users were signed up. Now, we'd announced this last year. Getting to see the results is hopefully some consequence and shows, you know, there's some reality here in approaching it. And so for those of you not familiar, the bank is, Bradesco is the client. Bradesco is one of the largest banks in Brazil for the non-Brazilians in the audience. And they partnered with RGA, primarily out of Sao Paulo, which is one of our, I think, best offices in our network. And they addressed a really big challenge. And so when we talk about transformational, existential questions, this is one. A new generation doesn't trust banks. If you're a bank, the only value proposition of any bank anywhere is around trust. I mean, that is what banks do. So if you have a generation coming up and they don't trust banks, you probably have a pretty serious problem. And so this team launched Next. Next is a bank that is targeted specifically for this digital generation and had the results you've seen. And so how did this bank build trust? Well, it started with a process that I think anyone probably in this room understands. Put the consumer first. That's easy to say, it's hard to do. Started with putting the consumer in the middle of the process and learning about them. And the first thing they learned was, it's not about money itself. That actually, if anyone here works at a bank or has worked on a bank as a client before, that's actually a pretty common learning. The difference is, previous generations wanted things like, oh, it isn't about money, it's about security. This very digitally native generation wanted experiences. But there's a tension in that, because if you want experiences, you want to use your money to have those experiences today, live life to its fullest, but you also still need to save money so that you can continue to reach your life milestones and live life to the fullest. And that's complicated if you're early in your career because you don't have a lot of money. You live paycheck to paycheck. And so that tension of how do I have the experiences that make life fulfilling today and save for the ones that do it tomorrow is complicated in this 30-day cycle. And so this team designed a bank that helps them do that. So this will give you a sample of some of what the bank feels like. The service and brand design obviously is incredible, and you can feel it in the video. If any Brazilian in the audience, you can pull out your phone and sign up for it now and understand it. But the business transformation that's enabled by that is because it's around lifetime customer value. So we talked about how do you build a bank for someone's whole life. You saw that in the video. And everyone has the same retirement goal. You want to save money as you retire. Historically, if a bank, and this is exactly why digitally native potential customers lose trust, is historically a bank has not needed you to stay a long-term customer to make money. In fact, if you fail at reaching your goal, the bank still makes money. And actually the idea of a bank like Next, which is built to be your bank for a lifetime, gives us the opportunity to actually help people reach their goals, which is amazing, and make money in the meantime. It's win-win. Both parties win in this case, which is pretty powerful. And arguably, it's that trust that actually led to the transformation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben Williams, who's going to talk to us about experience transformation.
Thanks, Saneel. So experience transformation, as you probably know, it's been a big part of RGA. A lot of our most famous work has come under the banner of experience transformation. But the way we define it at RGA is really creating value for not only our clients and their brands, but also for the consumer, and putting the consumer at the center of everything we do. When we connect with them at scale, we do it well, we can really move culture. And that takes one of three forms. Experience transformation, we sort of dig into sort of three core areas at RGA. Product and service innovation, what are we putting out there in the world for consumers to engage with brands? Customer experience and membership, as Saneel said earlier, it was connecting consumers to brands in sort of multiple ways, thinking about every single moment across the user journey, converting from commerce to membership. And then commerce itself, we know it's being disrupted. It's no longer a destination, no longer are you driving to a website necessarily or a retail experience, but commerce becoming a layer across the entire user experience. And so a piece of work I want to share with you on the transformation that we sort of did recently and launched earlier this year was reimagining a sneaker drop. And we did it for one of our clients. If you've ever purchased sneakers or you tried to get a pair of high heat sneakers, you know it's a pretty terrible experience. We really reimagined that and allowed commerce to happen directly within Snapchat. World first, purchasing product within Snapchat and then tying it to a delivery, express delivery, so actually you got the product within an hour or two. We did it for Jordan Brand. We've worked with Jordan Brand for a few years now, and they came to us with a really interesting brief, and that was for the first time ever they were going to be the marquee sponsor of NBA's All-Star weekend in Los Angeles, and they wanted to do a splash in digital as much as they were going to be doing activations, events in LA. And so what could we be doing in digital? A couple of key pieces fed into that. You'll probably recognize this picture. It was a moment 30 years ago, so it was going to be the 30-year anniversary for an iconic moment with Michael Jordan, but also the brand, and how could we celebrate that anniversary. The second piece was a highly coveted sneaker that was going to be launched, and so this is the Air Jordan 3 Tinker Edition, which was actually the original design for the shoes that Michael wore back in 1988. So how could we tie a commerce piece into this celebration of that moment from 30 years ago? So we had three core pillars that we needed to hit with this. First one being celebrating that moment. How do we bring that moment to life for people that remember that moment back in 1988 and also a new generation? Connect to exclusive products, so enable commerce. How do we have it a shoppable experience? And then for the final piece, we know this consumer is unique. They're unique in that they look to the brand for things that are new and things that are different and never been done before. So taking all those pieces fed into the idea of AR Jordan, and we launched it at All-Star Weekend. It's an augmented reality experience at the heart of it, reimagining what that moment was like in 1988. Connected it to commerce and allowed express delivery of the product itself. But we started here, so you can see here some of the creative behind the scenes was we actually didn't start with tech, we didn't lead with a platform, we led with the consumer, and so we put the consumer at the heart of this experience, and we thought what's the most engaging and what's going to be the ultimate experience to really connect with the brand and that moment. Things like how far was Michael off the court, how far should it be from the consumer? So all the little details we started to map into this creative vision got everybody excited. The brand was excited about what we could do. We were excited about putting something like this out into the world, but we needed to figure out how to execute it. How do we actually get it made? We broke it down into four core pieces. Obviously, there was an augmented reality piece that we wanted to bring to life. We needed a platform. We needed a 3D model of Michael. We needed to replicate Michael himself, and so how are we going to get that done? We needed a payment gateway, and we obviously needed express delivery to get the product into the people's hands and do the fulfillment piece of it. Rather than trying to execute this, we actually looked at the best of the best. So we looked at partners to come on board. So Snapchat worked really closely with those guys. So shout out to Snapchat, worked really closely with them to bring to life their augmented reality platform and really get the experience to the level we needed it at. 2K Sports, Nike and Jordan have had a long-standing relationship with those guys, so the computer gaming company. So they gave us the model of Michael as a good starting point to really develop the 3D model of Michael. Shopify had been talking to Snapchat around integrating their payment gateway directly into Snapchat, and so we sort of leveraged that as part of this idea, and it was a first of its kind again into the world, and so we doubled down on that. And then express delivery coming out of RGA's venture program. We'd known about dark store for a while, and they're really disrupting the last mile delivery space, and so we connected that into the experience for the final piece of this. And we fast forward to February, so it was about when we say transformation at speed, this was about an 8-week process over the holidays, launched at All-Star Weekend. And so what you're seeing here is the augmented reality experience. This was live in Snapchat, it was around the world, and people could experience Michael wherever they might have been, and could walk around Michael, see that iconic pose of Michael from back in 1988, like they'd never seen it before. The second piece of this was a geo-fenced e-commerce experience. So for those fans that were in LA for All-Star Weekend, the AR lens experience actually connected to a commerce flow. And so what you're seeing here is somebody actually going from the lens into the commerce piece, adding the shoe to their cart and actually purchasing it. And then the final piece for those that purchased those sneakers, Dark Store did the fulfillment. And so if you were in LA, purchased the shoes, you got the product in an hour or two. So there was delivery service to the hotel or even at the event, and so people were blown away, and you can see here some of the reactions of not only just getting the shoes, but getting them within an hour at the event. And so, user sentiment is one thing, but the engagement numbers are another. So this was over the All-Star Weekend, so just a 2-day period, there was nearly 10 million Snapchat Lens views. Engagement was up, Snapchat Lens engagement was up 400%. The shoes sold out in 23 minutes, but the big story really is that for the first time ever, a branded product or a brand's product was directly sold completely in Snapchat. And with that, I'm going to just run a short clip just to encapsulate exactly what came to life.
And Michael is backing all the way to the middle of the backcourt.
Creativity and imagination is the key. Plus, he's got to make the dunk.
To celebrate 30 years since Michael Jordan's iconic free throw line dunk, we created an experience just as iconic. By recreating Michael in 3D, we brought him back to the court. This time in augmented reality for fans around the world. Users could experience all 6'6" of Michael flying through the air, true to his pose on the court in 1988. But this was no ordinary Snapchat AR lens.
The sneaker was released on Snapchat, allowing customers to purchase the shoe on the app.
That same Snapchat lens allowed users to purchase the Air Jordan 3 Tinkers. We partnered with Shopify to power the geo-fence commerce experience directly in Snapchat. Interacting with MJ, users are prompted to start their purchase. Fans would have the ability to quickly pick their size, add the exclusive sneakers to their bag, and complete their order within seconds. We then leveraged Dark Store for their express last-mile delivery service to get the sneakers direct to fans in under 2 hours. Successfully creating a social commerce experience in augmented reality. The sneakers sold out in 23 minutes. The lens generated 4 times the user engagement in Snapchat, and the world looked at e-commerce in a whole new way.
So I'm going to talk through the last of the 3 transformations. This one is almost the trickiest one because of all of the changes that we've talked about. Actually using marketing to help a client or a brand transform can be done in so many different ways right now. But the definition that we found that we really like is we want to add value through creativity at every stage of the customer journey. So essentially, we have opportunities afforded by the internet, by digital technologies, to connect a customer journey from an enormous piece of awareness-driving creative all the way through to the commerce experience. And traditionally, I think as an industry, we've saved our creativity for that bit right at the top, the big awareness-driving piece. But we have opportunities to be creative all the way along the chain now and demonstrate the power of our creative thinking throughout the entire customer journey. So that's what we're working on. And the interesting thing about what's happening at this particular point in time is you guys know this, we know this. Everyone in the advertising industry is being asked to answer questions that they were just not being asked to answer 5 or 6 years ago. Some of these are kind of familiar. So how would we make a new brand famous? How do we make this old brand relevant? Some of them are just brand new. So how do we digitally connect our brand across the entire marketing funnel? How would we use data differently to get people to talk about us? How do we reallocate our media budget based on behavior and not channel? These are questions we were not being asked 5 or 6 years ago, and they're questions that we now have to answer. But the one that we're going to talk about today is how do we create a brand from scratch to get this startup to scale? And the transformation that we effected on this one that we've been was both transformative and definitely fast, is taking a startup to a $3.3 billion acquisition in 1 year. So from not very much money to $3.3 billion, which is kind of an enormous amount of money, and in the space of the year. So it was quite a wild ride, and it definitely qualified for us as transformation at speed. The startup where we were working with was a brand called Jet. Jet.com, for those of you who are not in the US, is an e-commerce platform who are essentially competing in a very competitive market. Everybody knows who the competitors are in the e-commerce platform, but Jet.com had built a really great customer experience based on they can do grocery delivery, they can do household delivery, they can do everything that all of their competitors do. And they put in all the work and effort to create this great customer experience. Doing CRM and distribution and fulfillment and inventory for e-commerce platforms is very complicated. And they built all of that at this point in time. They'd done all the work, the hard work, by the time they came to us. But what they actually needed, we felt, was something that persuaded people. A great experience in e-commerce is table stakes. You have to do it, right? If you don't have a great experience, people won't come back. So what we felt would differentiate them in a marketplace is a real set of values that would persuade customers to switch from the competition to Jet. So we talked to them, and what they told us is we're a super innovative company. And we're like, okay, cool, what does that mean? You're a super innovative company. You've built this sort of engine. They're like, no. Our innovation is specifically focused on one thing, and that is helping customers save money. So Jet.com had built in an enormous amount of tricks and helpful tools to their interface that would enable customers shopping on Jet.com to save money throughout the entire commerce experience. And we were like, okay, that's cool. That's kind of interesting. So it's not just that you're innovative within this very specific area. So we took that brief, and what we started looking for was an idea, a marketing idea, an advertising idea, that would talk us through, that would enable us to sort of prove that point, not just through the message that we said, not just through an advert that says, we're innovative, we help you save money, but also through a behavior, something that would enable Jet to prove the point as they were kind of taking this brand to market. And this is something RGA has thought about for years. We think about story and system. In the modern age, the idea that you have, the creative execution that you have is important, but it's also increasingly important, the system by which you distribute that creative idea. So we've thought about this for a while. And the opportunity for Jet, we felt, was to say, okay, don't just say that you are an innovative brand that helps people save money. Really show it. Really demonstrate this. Bring this to life all the way along the customer journey. So the platform we came up with was Innovating Savings. This was our story. This was the message that we wanted to put out into the world and the behavior that we wanted to demonstrate in the world. And I'm just going to show you a very quick video demonstrating how that Innovating Savings platform came to life.
Or one last point before we
Oh, sorry.
This won the Cannes Lion Grand Prix for media last year.
Oh, it did win the Cannes Lion Grand Prix for media. Yes, we forgot that. Very important.
In 1 year, Jet.com went from a retail startup to a $3.3 billion company and got a ton of people saving along the way. Jet.com's mission is to always find innovative ways to save money and pass those savings on to customers. So we created a through-the-line campaign that demonstrated Jet's mind-blowing approach to innovating saving. We started by getting in on the Super Bowl excitement without paying for a Super Bowl ad, by making the most Super Bowl commercial ever. Literally.
Welcome to Jet.com. We're going to do a lot of talking about bowls. Super Bowls.
The commercial ran online only, but because it was a Super Bowl commercial, our keywords and tagging were more relevant to the search term Super Bowl commercial than any other commercial in the Super Bowl, which made us one of the most watched Super Bowl commercials that weekend without paying millions of dollars. On radio, we found an innovative way to save by creating an entire campaign without using any voice actors, because we used the Google Translate voice instead.
It's an innovative way to save, sort of like making this radio ad without an overpriced voiceover to read the script in a quote-unquote exciting way.
On national TV, our brand films showcased the savings innovations that didn't quite make it to the public, like a box-packing robot and a shrink ray that was meant for prices.
Whew, it's got a little kick to it.
And for the holidays, instead of encouraging people to spend more, Jet was the only retailer that told people to spend less on the people they love. And to help, we created the Careculator, a social media tool that tells you how much to spend on your friends and family based on how much they care about you on Facebook. And of course, showed you how much more you can buy on Jet for less. By finding innovative ways to save on everything from Super Bowl commercials to friendships, we showed people how Jet's dedication to saving every little bit can really add up.
So, the interesting thing about this, what this took to do it, was basically media as part of the creative process. I think we've talked a lot over the last few years about the separation between creative and media and why that's kind of insane, and why, as digital marketing sort of starts to take over everything, why it's even harder to separate creative and media. So RGA has an integrated media team. They sit in-house with us, and they're part of our creative process. Our media team, our connections planners were very much part of this creative process, feeding insights to the creative team as it came up and finding these opportunities for us. And it also took a serious commitment. We didn't show some of the other bits that we did for this, but it took a demonstration of company values at every single stage of the customer journey. So obviously, if you're doing advertising on TV, we want to be able to prove that we are innovating savings on TV, but at every single stage, those engagement pieces like the Careculator, designed to prove to everyone that Jet.com is helping you save money. So having those kind of values, demonstrating them across every stage of the customer journey as creatively as you possibly can, we feel is the future of marketing, and connecting all of those dots along the way. And the results that came out of this are nothing to be sniffed at. Walmart bought Jet.com for $3.3 billion after a year of us working together. It was a completely wild ride, but them being able to differentiate themselves through brand, differentiate themselves through value, was a fundamentally very, very important part of that acquisition, and we were very proud to be part of it. So I'm just going to hand back to Barry, who is going to talk about the principles of transformation.
Thank you, Jess. So just to wrap things up, just wanted to share with you some of the things we've learned along the way as we've been thinking about transformation and how to do things fast. I think these are principles that relate both to the companies that provide services to clients as well as things that clients need to keep in mind as well. I think one of the very first things we identified as we were building a consulting business was one of the key Achilles heels of consulting, which is that they don't actually make things. In fact, that's one of the dings against management consultants, is that clients hire them to help them transform, and the leave behind is a deck this thick that's some sort of a playbook that's not always actionable. And I think that's the big difference of a consultancy that was born out of a digital agency, is that our starting point was that we actually make things, and we connect the making of things back to the thinking. That's the thing that we lacked until we got into consulting. And it's this journey from thinking to making is what clients are actually looking for. And it's actually the way that you can operate fast and work at speed. The idea that you're just going to hand over some deck and the client has to implement with a bunch of other partners is one of the things that actually causes barriers, that slows things down. So the idea of going from thinking to making, being consultants who make, is one of the key differentiators. The second thing is that the business model of a lot of companies who actually provide services to clients are actually incentivized to move slowly. If you actually bill by the hour, then you're incentivized just from the starting point to drag things out. And so the idea that a transformation is going to take years because we need to bill you for those number of years is one thing that is a big red flag. So we actually tried to take that off the table. We try not to price anything by the hour going forward. We try to make everything based on outputs and deliverables. That means if we actually deliver them faster to a client than what we thought it was going to take, we actually make a little bit more money. But it's actually aligned with the interests of the client because everything is about speed. And so if we're incentivized to move fast, that's one thing that's going to help. Another point is that when we were working with these mature businesses, as Saneel showed that curve of where business transformation starts to kick in, you can't go in and tell them that their problem is solved by acting like a startup. Tear everything that you're doing down, just start all over again, pretend like you're coming out of Silicon Valley and you're building some sort of a startup. It's actually true that when David battles Goliath, Goliath has natural advantages. A lot of our clients are huge Fortune 500 companies. They've made massive investments in infrastructure, logistics, supply chains. Those are all competitive advantages, and those have to be the starting point of any transformation. So any consultant that goes into a client and says, tear that all down, those aren't advantages any longer, you've got to act like a startup, you should fire those consultants on the spot and you can come talk to us. And the last point, I think, is, I think diversity has been one of the key topics of our industry over the last year for sure. And obviously, diversity has a couple of different meanings. It certainly means diversity in terms of ethnic backgrounds and female leadership, et cetera. But there's another idea of diversity which I think also has been lacking in consulting, which is what are the backgrounds of consultants? It tends to be that most of the big consulting companies hire MBAs that are coming out of the same management schools all over the world. And those same MBAs are the same ones that work on the client side. So when you engage with one of these types of firms, you end up hiring people who look just like you, who think just like you, have been trained just like you. So a lot of this is about how to diversify skills. And I think that's an area where agencies actually have a bit of an advantage. We tend to be companies with a lot of diversity in terms of the backgrounds and skills. And that's something that I think we need to keep bringing to the forefront continually. Now, those are all the principles of transformation that we've landed upon over the last few years, and we'll keep coming up with new ones as we go because we're still relatively new at this. We kicked off our consulting practice 2012, so it's only been about 6 years. And the other side of our corporate innovation business is represented by RGA Ventures, which is also here, running the Cannes Lions Startup Academy over in Palais 2, and that started in 2013, so it's just about 5 years old. And both of those things we're learning from every day. The last point is about, it's not just about having these principles, but you've got to have some things that enable you. We have a whole holding company that sat out Cannes this year while they were working on a big piece of software that they believe will help guide the organization. And we also believe that we need these same kind of tools. We've spent about the last 15 years working on an integrated suite of software programs that we call RGAOS that literally help guide our collaboration and integration across a number of offices all over the world and a pretty diverse set of skills. But it's also about new ways of working. We're finding more and more that if you want to move fast, you can't be disconnected from your clients where you're in one office and they're in another office. More and more of our work is taking on the characteristic of being embedded. Now, the big consultancies around the world, they're used to working this way, but it's not very common among agencies. And I think going forward, we're all going to have to learn how to work this different way where we embed our teams inside of clients so that we can move even faster. And the last thing is a point about talent. So it's not enough any longer just to hire people and say, turn them loose and go out and make great things. As this disruption is happening at speed, as transformation is happening at speed, we're constantly having to figure out ways to both communicate to our broader teams across the world, across all these different offices, across thousands of employees, but also how to train them. And not just our own teams, but also our clients simultaneously. So investment in training, education, communications, these are all things that I think most of us have underinvested in over the years, and they're becoming areas where we're going to have to figure out a way to spend more. So just to close, if the theme is speed, I think there's a slogan that speed kills, and that might be true as it relates to drugs, but I don't think it's true at all as it relates to business. Speed is actually the savior, it's the salvation. We all have to figure out how to work faster. We know that the problems out there among our clients are pretty dramatically large. Transformation spans these 3 huge areas that we talked about, but I think the big differentiator and the thing that's going to cause companies to win going forward is whether or not they can move fast. And so we leave you with our title, Transformation at Speed. Hopefully we've inspired some ideas among all of you who have visited, and thank you very much for attending today.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Transformation at Speed. Thank you, Saneel, Radia, Ben Williams, Jess Greenwood, and Barry Wacksman. That was a fascinating session you all got there, and as we always expect to see from RGA at Cannes Lions. If you missed any of it or feel you need to watch it again, I do, please catch up on YouTube Lions live site. Or, of course, you can go to www.lovethework.com. Right, we're now going to take a quick break before we're back with a brand that has won multiple Cannes Lions, but they have never, ever spoken before on stage. It's a Cannes first, and it's IKEA, who are here to talk with Cantor Consulting and Wonderman on how data is reinventing the flat pack empire. So we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.